You're good? Thumbs up. All right. Monica, are you ready? Is everybody up here ready? Okay, everybody please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you all for coming today. Today we're going to be hearing from strategic planning. Before we get started, I just want to introduce all of our board members that are here today. Down on my left is Lucy McConaughey. Next to her is Jim Curtella. Bev Kennedy is absent today. Betty Ann Peck to my right, Kristen Hanowitz, Carol Mordawanek, and Tom Schutte. And then also absent is Tracy Rappa, our alternate, and Scott Lazurick. Alrighty, item number 3, first public comment. We do 2 public comments like usual. Anybody from the public wish to speak? You got 2 minutes. State your name and address for the record. Public comment number 1 going once. Public comment number 1 going twice. Public comment number 1 going 3 times. Public comment number 1 closed. All right. Item number 4, presentation by the Strategic Planning Committee. Please come on up and state your name and title for the record, all of that stuff.
Well, hi everyone, my name is Kathy Verlick. I am the chair of the Strategic Planning Commission here in Seymour. I'm going to just take you through a little bit about what strategic planning is, how we implement it here in the town, and why we kind of think it's important. Now, try to contain your excitement. I promise I'm going to make it interesting. I'm going to start. I'm going to start off by letting you know who's on our committee, and it's in alphabetical order. I have Stefan Bahuniak, Tricia, Bob Finley, Brianna Gerard, Kurt Miller, and myself, and as I said, I am the chair. Perfect. So what is strategic planning? Strategic planning is defined as the process of clearly defining an organization's direction and making decisions and allocating resources accordingly to achieve goals. Well, what does that mean? Defines what's important to a group, like a municipality, a company, a project, and it lays out the steps to get there. That's all it is. So why is it important? It's proactive, not reactive. What do I mean by that? We don't wait for things to come up and bite us before we deal with them. We try to anticipate what those things are, and we put plans in place to prepare for them before they get here. It helps us to understand our processes and do them better. Once you're tracking and monitoring and seeing how things work, you can make adjustments on a small scale rather than having to completely reinvent the wheel on the big scale. Creates visibility. So one of the big things we're looking for always is data. We want to see how are things working, what are the numbers, what is the data, what's important, and we track that. And we want to be able to predict based on that information. It facilitates long-term planning. Again, you know the numbers, you can identify the trends, you can start to predict what might happen in the future. Creates a record. What did we do? What worked? What didn't work? That's equally as important as what worked, right? So we want to know, okay, yeah, we did this great thing, but this thing that we wanted to do didn't work. And why is that? Data. It supports requests for budget, which is of importance to all of you. And rather than me coming up and saying, I need money, you can say why. And then I can turn to you and say, because. Because I have the data. I can show you that because we've done A, B, and C, E is important. E is something we should be doing, and that's why we should be putting those resources against E. And it helps us prioritize our decisions. Again, it goes back to data. Once you have all the data, you can look at it and go, yeah, that's really important, or we can wait on that because it's not as critical. So what are we doing now? Okay, we are in the implementation process. Strategic planning has been going on for the better part of 10 years. I've been here for the whole dramatic drama of it. We're finally at the point where we're taking the processes that we've learned about, we've identified who the players are, and now we're putting them to work. So, what does that look like? Every department head is being tasked with creating a strategic plan. Not just this is what I think I'm going to do, a critical strategic plan on what their objectives are and how they're going to get there. The Strategic Planning Committee provides support for that. Everybody who's on our committee either does strategic planning on the regular basis as part of their day job. Actually, everybody does strategic planning as part of their day job. So we can bring those real life examples to the folk who are now trying to create these plans. And we can say, well, this is how we would have fixed that problem or how we would have addressed that problem. We're beginning to work with the first select woman on taking her individual plans and consolidating them into actionable objectives. And as I was explaining this to Anne Marie, it's like, you know all those great ideas, all the things you want to get done that are going to make our town even better? Instead of just talking about them, let's figure out the steps to get them done. So Anne Marie and I are working on those key goals. And we are implementing regular, prescribed, scheduled demonstrations of their strategic plan. So we're holding people's feet to the fire. We're saying, we want to see your plan twice a year. And we expect the Board of Selectmen to see it as well. Based on that, we think that we can start to use the strategic planning data in our budgeting process. We're collecting all this information. Now people are telling us what they've done, what they intend to do, and now when they come and say, I need money, show me your strategic plan. One more. Okay. So like I said, strategic planning helps us define and identify priorities. What's important? So that also applies to a budgeting process. This is more critical than this might be right now. We're going to ask you to what I call it demand the plan, but I made it nicer and said request the plan. Somebody comes to you asking for capital, ask them for their strategic plan. They should have it, and they should be expecting you to ask for it. And then when people do come asking for funds, validate that they have a clear plan on how they're going to take that money and they're going to use it, and justify that spend. It seems almost intuitive that that's how things should be done, and it is. But this is formalizing that process. This is memorializing this process. And it's also going to be publicizing this process, making the information and the process available to the public for them to see. And that's strategic planning. So, if there are any questions, I'll take them.
Okay. Just give us some examples of some of the things that we've already implemented. Now, I mean, I know a few of them, but I think it's important to, maybe the viewers at home need to kind of know a little bit about that, what we've put money aside for already, planning for 5-10 year programs.
I'm just going to interrupt quickly. I'm sorry, Kathy. I'm going to get up and speak to some of the specifics of the budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So.
Okay.
Feel free to give some examples.
Well, sure.
Well, if Trish is going to do that, we'll do that.
Yeah, but we definitely have been implementing, strategic plan processes for the past several years, but it's always been more specific and targeted. Now what our goal is to make it widespread, if that makes sense. So rather than just, okay, well, you seem to get it, so we're going to let you do it. Now it's all the department heads. It's part of their job to create the strategic plan.
Okay. All right, we'll go down the table. Lucy, any questions?
Not at the moment. I understand what strategic planning is all about.
Yeah. And we've met. We've done some strategic planning together.
Jim?
I'm all set.
Betty Ann?
Long-term goals, or you're looking at immediate goals?
So when you develop a strategic plan, it includes both.
Right.
So you would have your longer term, a department would have their long-term goals and
Mhm.
objectives, and then usually you break it down into smaller objectives.
Yes.
So like, for example, where I work, I'm in software development. We have our 2-year plan, and then we go down as, as micro as 2 weeks.
Okay.
Every 2 weeks. You might have heard Agile.
Yes. That's what I was referring to. And then is this going to be made public?
Our objective has always been to make it public. One of our goals is to work on getting a dashboard system that I understand is in the works so that the public can see progress on key objectives.
And we can't just leave that in the minutes of meetings? I mean, we'll have it something that, I'm not asking that it be posted, the written strategic plan or the long-term goals. I was just, I was muted.
There you are.
It's just like a computer, stop hitting the button. You have it?
There you are.
Just like a computer. I wasn't asking that it would be made public as a form. I was just, was there going to be any type of public access if someone wanted to see it?
I mean, our plans are always, I believe, available on the website.
Right.
So, but to the uninitiated eye, it might just be a whole lot of stuff.
Absolutely. So I was just curious.
Yeah,
That was all.
so, I mean, our objective would be to take that information, that data, and to be able to present it in a format that is accessible and people can see, if they choose to, hey, this is the stuff that's being done.
Great, thanks. That's all I had. I'm all set.
Kristen.
Thank you.
Carol?
All set, thank you.
Tommy?
All set, thanks.
Okay.
Thank
All right, thank you. All right, Trish?
I'm so short, I'm just gonna assume this is gonna pick up. It's okay. They can hear me, right? Close enough. I just wanna thank everyone for having us out tonight. I'm gonna do a little bit of a deeper dive. Well, I pulled it right off, thank you,
She has
Mary.
to introduce herself.
Trish Stanka, 203 Pearl Street.
Thank you.
I just want to give everyone a little bit of history on why this is so important and I'm so passionate about it. I have been serving on a board or commission one way or the other since I've lost track, the early 2000s. I started out working on the Board of Finance as a volunteer, just like you all, with Kurt Miller for a few years, and then I spent 11 years as chairman. So I know the difficult task you have ahead of you, and it's not fair to you all to be making decisions and not really understand what might be in the budget that you could be affecting in a negative way that's there for a strategic reason. And that's why I asked Rich if you guys wouldn't mind having us out tonight just to kind of review some of this with you. As Kathy stated, the Strategic Planning Committee has been together for about 10 years, which seems like an awfully long time. But this was put together because I went to a conference and found out that our rating agencies are really demanding that towns who are graded with high grades, which is what directly affects our bond rating. And I know some of you are new, so let me just explain that just a little bit. When the town has to go out to borrow money for bonding, it affects the rates they get at the bank. So it's going to affect how much we're going to pay back. So it's super important that we want to have the highest grade that Seymour is capable of having. And so I came back very excited when Mr. Miller was selectman. In all the years I sat on the Board of Finance, and this is no knock to any former selectman prior to Mr. Miller, it's just that the town has grown, and just like businesses and the environment, things have changed so much since they were selectmen. We were always very proactive we were always very reactive in this artificial manner in trying to keep taxes so low, which is what you want to do and which is what the townsfolk want. But the problem with that is, again, it's artificial, because what happened is year after year after year, the budgets everyone's reviewing, they're not real, because we know how old our infrastructure is. We know, and I'm just going to use, let's say, the elevator at the community services is going to break because it's old and it's coming due for service, but there's no place to put money in the budget, and we don't know that it's going to break this year. It might break next year, so we'll just deal with it if it happens. And so what happens is it breaks, and we're robbing from a budget to pay for the elevator. And we are doing that over and over, not just on that item, but on multiple items. We don't have enough money because LoCIP, you're familiar with LoCIP funds, which helps us fund paving of roads. It only covers so many miles, and it doesn't cover nearly enough miles for what the traffic, especially today, is requiring us to maintain, because it's creating the potholes more quickly. So there's just all these line items that are in the budget that are affected by these annual items that nobody was budgeting for because we wouldn't know if we needed them. So I came back very passionate, and I talked, and it took some time to convince Mr. Miller to put together a 10-year strategic plan, because it does seem like a long way out. Like Kathy had alluded to, somebody asked, is this short-term or long-term? It's a 10-year strategic plan because what every department has been learning over the course of 10 years, because this is a little bit, it's the first time Seymour's ever done this. We're familiar with strategic planning, but how do we implement it here? How do we change the culture? How do we get people on board and understand how important this is? How do we identify and find things that mirror each other to come up with a town strategic plan? That takes time, and some of it's trial and error. So we're going to identify things that work, like Kathy said, things that don't. But as people are creating their strategic plans, they're looking 10 years out. And we're defining what has to get done sooner than later. And we really need to get here. So we're putting it here, but it's going to be a little bit further out. So this might be in the 9th, 10th year. And then as things change, we're trying to be agile and adjust to those needs. And that's where Kathy's saying, ask people, where does this fit into your strategic plan? Because if it doesn't fit into the strategic plan for the town, and it's not in their strategic plan, it's probably something you could easily identify as a, we can look at this next year if your strategic plan is updated and it fits at that time, but it's not really fitting right now, right? But there are things, and Rich, you had asked what kinds of things are in the budget that are for, in the budget that you're looking at that's part of strategic planning. Some of those things that we identify might not necessarily be something a department is saying is important, but we know it's coming down the pike. So one of the big things I use as an example is revaluation. The town does not have the choice. We'd all like to avoid that, right? Like, our taxes are here, let's just keep them here and not risk them going up, right? We don't have a choice. The state says we have to do that every 5 years. What used to happen 11 and 12, 13 prior years ago is we'd have our budget, and every 5 years you'd see the budget hike $500,000. I don't know how much it is today, do you? Because I'm sure it's gone up since I sat here. Anyway, let's say $500,000. You'll see a huge $500,000 spike in the budget, which is automatically going to affect the mill rate right there.
It's
can't
about
touch it.
130.
Yeah, okay. Well, you can't touch it because revaluation has to happen. So what strategic planning did early on was say those items that we know we have to spend the money on, why are we going to spike the budget every 5 years? Don't spike it $500,000 in year 5. $100,000 every year. Just like you get used to at home, this is what we're paying, and in year 5, we have it. We don't have to spike that budget up. And you don't have to freak out about cutting everybody else because, oh my gosh, we've got revaluation coming up. That's $500,000 more now. Some of those other items that you're going to see in the budget, they're small capital projects. They might not be in there permanently, but they're things we know that we need. For example, one of those items now is the annual F-550 truck purchase. Those are trucks for public works. And I invite anybody to go down. I'm sure that they would be happy to speak with you. Who do they want to speak with?
Frank.
Frank Gavinelli. Because if you look at their vehicles, they're running them into the ground. They're sending them to the mechanics. They're not going to last. Vehicles are only good for so long. So that's just an example. That's not going to be in there necessarily for the next 50 years. But right now, it's a huge need, so it's built in there, and for the strategic planning, so they can get a truck every year. Some other examples, the turf replacement up at the high school, that has to get replaced. It gets worn down, the kids get injured. It's non-negotiable. We can be sued for that. Town building repair fund. You know how old Seymour is? Our buildings are incredibly old. We have an old infrastructure. And even when that's caught up, you have to keep putting money in so we can keep repairing the buildings and keep them up to repair and up to standard. We have our roads I spoke to already, but because LoCIP only covers so many miles, and revaluation, which I spoke to already. FS vehicle? What is it? Oh, I'm sorry. FS stands for First Select Woman. I'm sorry. I'm not good with acronyms all the time. So right now, those are the items that are in the budget, and those are the things that you're going to want to look for. Again, I've sat in your seat, and I'm not standing here demanding that you can't ever touch anything, right? It's really about understanding where things fit in line with someone's strategic plan. It's really about, if we do have to touch something, does it make sense? And is it something we should eliminate? If it's part of strategic plan, probably not. And being very thoughtful on what has to be cut, because that's your job. If people are coming out to vote and they're failing the budget and there's no place else to look, and you're looking at things that are strategically in there, I certainly understand those things are up for game just like everything else. But what you don't want to do is eliminate it completely out of the budget, because that throws us so far behind the 8 ball. This year, you're all familiar, I presume, with state mandates. If you're not, you'll get very used to them. They're a joy because you don't plan for them, and after you've set your budget, the state comes in and says you must do this. Too bad. Figure it out. So one of the things the state did, and one of the reasons I asked to be here tonight, is because revaluation was in the budget at one time, and the Board of Finance pulled it completely out. I was upset at first, and then I realized nobody's probably ever explained the strategic plan to anybody, so how can you get upset? And that's why I said it's really important for you guys to have this understanding. When you cut that out, it just throws us behind the 8 ball completely. But then, on top of it, the state came in and said, well, we know you're not up for revaluation for 5 years, but yeah, we're changing things up, and you're one of the towns identified that you're doing it next year. So it's 4 years. And now we had to use funds that are normally not available to us. We used OPEB funds, but, I'm sorry, we used ARPA funds. Don't jump in and correct me too quickly. I was like, it wasn't OPEB. We used ARPA funds, but that was very specific to something that was given to the town, and I can assure you probably won't see that again for another 50 years, if ever. First time I've ever seen it, yeah. So, we used that to kind of save the day since it moved up a year and pay for it. So it worked out okay, but that's unusual. So I don't know. I know I speak quickly, but I'm really passionate about the strategic plan. I left for a little while. I came back. Kathy has sat with me through the entire process. And I stepped away, and she stepped up to be chairman and still sits there. She does a terrific job. So if there's any questions that I can answer as far as history or where we're going, or anything that I spoke too quickly about that you don't understand.
ARPA funds for the turf field.
Mhm.
We had some money away for that because that was not budgeted.
Right. And we need, those are the things that we're looking at. But even though the ARPA funds are being used to fix it, again, you can't get too comfortable because it's gonna wear down again. They use it every year, and it's gonna have to be replaced. Those ARPA funds are not there anymore. So now, next time it's gotta be replaced, we've gotta have the money there. So that's why those things I listed are so important to really think about before you do anything with them, when you're thinking about cutting.
So Trish, can I just have one little
Absolutely.
brief comment? So one of the kind of key things about strategic planning and agile planning is that it's all about communicating. And it's all about nothing being carved into stone that is absolutely immovable. So one of the things I would ask of all of you is if there are specific things in terms of format, in terms of specific data that you would like, timing on presentation, anything like that, I would invite you to bring that to either come to one of our meetings. They're a lot of fun.
They're informal, they're nothing like this.
Oh, this is laid back today.
This is very casual.
Well, I appreciate you, stepping it down to my level. No, I would encourage you and invite you to provide that feedback. Again, the Strategic Planning Commission is as much we behave in exactly the same way as everyone else. And, if we need to create objectives that are, that we haven't identified as of yet, we're happy to do that. As much as our task is to support, the town and to support the employees here, the department heads, it's also to support the other boards and committees, and not operate in a vacuum. So, again, if you're we'd really like to see how this tracks or how that works. Definitely reach out and let me know, because we've got some really smart people, a lot smarter than me, who are on this committee, and we can figure out how to make that happen to give you useful data that help you with your decision-making processes. That's kind of what we're all about. So,
Okay.
okay, you can have that, Richard.
So does anybody have any questions, concerns?
Okay. How often do you guys meet?
Once a month.
You guys meet once a month?
And required to present to the Board of Selectmen once a year.
Okay. I was just thinking maybe it would be beneficial for us to have a presentation once a year from you guys as well, just to kind of give us an update on some of the things you've been working on throughout the year, similar to what we do with the Board of Ed. They do, I think every quarter, but I think once a year would be pretty good. Is that something that we all
Yeah, we're
think maybe is a
supposed
good idea to do up here?
I do.
That would be great, so you can get updates. We're a little late this year, for valid reasons, but the presentation to the Board of Selectmen is usually in December. We could probably, rather than interfere with your budget season, what do you think about also finding a Board of Finance meeting that month to give that same presentation to? And that way you can get any updates, and, cause that's really what it is when we go to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
But I will say that we tend to, when we present to the Board of Selectmen, we tend to do it from a 50,000 foot level.
Mhm.
We don't get into the minutia. If there's minutia that you would want us to look at, just let us know that.
Yeah, I think just an overview. Whatever you guys give the selectmen, I think, is going to be perfectly fine. And if there's any more like in detail things that anybody up here feels as though they need to know, you could just get back to Jason with an email answering anybody's question.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, but definitely, again, if there's something in particular you want us to dig into a bit, don't be afraid.
Okay,
I mean, we can't, we'll tell you no.
thank you.
Yep.
And that's all I have. Lucy,
No, I have no question.
Jim, Betty Ann.
I would be happy with a recording. The meetings are being recorded when the presentations are made at the first selectmen's meeting or not?
All our,
We'll get a presentation.
all the Board
Okay.
of Selectmen meetings are live.
Kristen, Carol, Tom. All right.
Well, thank you again for having
Thank
us,
you.
and like Kathy said, reach out anytime if you have any questions or concerns. Okay,
No, I think it's great.
appreciate it.
All right, thank you. All right, item number 5, public comment number 2. Public comment number 2 going once. Number 2 going twice. Public comment number 2 going 3 times. Public comment number 2 is closed. There is nobody from the public here. Item number 6, correspondence. Jason, did we get anything?
I haven't received
No questions or anything? Anne Marie, did you get emailed any questions on anything so far from anybody?
There's been nothing on Facebook and nothing coming through on our lives through Facebook on any of the budget presentations that have been presented to this board since
Okay. All right. Then we'll move on then to item number 7, new business. Again, everybody take a look at the schedule that we have here. So we're starting to wind things down. On Wednesday, this Wednesday, March 6th, the first selectwoman will be presenting her budget to the Board of Finance and to the public. So here is kind of my idea moving through the motions for the next few weeks. Okay, so once Anne Marie has presented her budget to us, we'll be getting together again next on Monday, March 11th. And at that time, I would like to go over expenditures, the expenditure side of the budget. Then when we meet on March 13th, I would like to go over the revenue side of the budget. And once we're done with the revenues, we'll meet again on March 18th to have a final discussion, and I hope to have a vote on that on March 18th on the overall. Okay, so that is the plan. Now, obviously, if, we have some questions that we need to be answered from either the expenditure or the revenue side, and we have to wait on that, March 18th will be the time that we should receive the answers to those questions, and pending on how those discussions go, maybe we might have to push it out to March 20th for a vote, but as of now, I'd like to have this wrapped up by March 18th. Okay? Any questions on that?
Do we have our regular, we don't do any of the deliberations during our regular meeting?
No.
Tuesday?
No, that's all going to be a separate thing. And once we are finished with our final deliberations on the 18th, we will have a separate agenda filed because we will need to seat our alternates to vote on that. Okay? Just standard like it always has been in the past. Any other questions on that for the new business?
When you go to vote on a budget that goes to the town.
Goes to the referendum, but actually we're voting to go to the meeting.
Right, but it's board members, not alternates that vote on it unless there's a board of finance member missing as an alternate.
Correct. So that's what I was saying. We'll have an agenda, we'll seat our alternates if need be, and we'll go through the motions like we normally do. Any other questions?
Should be on there already.
I don't know, I haven't printed out the agenda for the 18th yet. I go day by day here.
No, it's not on there.
Okay. If you could please file a revised.
Redo that one, yes.
Thank you. All right, anybody else have any new business? Nope. All right. Well, the time, we'll get an official time here. It's 7:36. We're going to close this workshop, and I will see everybody on Wednesday. Thank you.